Alice here with First to the Floor. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Alongside me, two guys who just need the playoffs to start today. Please, Wayne Spoonie and Jake Eisenberg. What's up, Spoonie?
Dude, hey, look. Playoffs, can't wait. Well, actually, I kind of like dreading them because it's terrifying and horrible. Like, it's such a grind, but can't wait for the playoffs. Boys, that was the most superstar game from Jason Tatum, where you just don't give a shit for a couple of quarters, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna go win this game against this bum squad. Like, boys, we got a superstar. We drafted him. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen a lot.
Hell yeah, dude. Jason Tatum decided I'll try for 4 minutes and ends up with 29 points.
It's over.
Which he got 29th point from somewhere, I'm not sure where, and ruined my parlay, but that's where we're moving on. We're on to bigger. We're on to bigger. It's not like he shot any threes late either. I have no idea what happened, but 46-12. I am kind of with you though, Spoonie, a little bit. On one hand, I want the playoffs to start because we're healthy and rolling, but my dad's in town, and we were talking about how different the regular season is to the playoffs. You just forget every year. You know what's nice? Regular season team winning 65 games, 80% of your games. You just roll out of bed. You win all your games pretty much. And the games that you lose, they don't matter at all because there's just your brain can't comprehend only 20% of what's happening. So it's all wins as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, this is the calm before the storm.
12.
46.
45. 46-12. It's insane.
Losing count. We're literally losing count of the wins. It's crazy. But it is the calm before the storm, emotionally speaking. Like we always, they talk about the ramp up physically and conditioning wise for the players. There's like a mental health ramp up, I think, for the hardcore fans of just like, okay, it's coming. If you look back at our highlights from our playback room streams from last year in the playoffs, particularly the first two rounds, it's just like us sweating balls for the entirety of each game, each series. And it's going to be that, I think, tenfold this year with the expectations, the lofty expectations on the team. So it's a ramp up for fans in that sense as well. But look, tonight we're going to get to look at the crazy, difficult stretch of games that are coming up for the Celtics, possibly the most difficult stretch of their season so far, before they make a turn onto easy street for the rest of the regular season. But before that, the Celtics, they are amazing. But what, guys, are their weaknesses? If they are going to lose at some point in the postseason, why might that happen? You can call it nitpicking. I might call it fandom, self-awareness. But very quickly, hit that like button before we get started here. And please subscribe to the First to the Floor YouTube channel. We just hit 3,000 subscribers. Now 5,000 is in our sights. The outcome for you is just more Celtics content in your life, which is pretty great, I think. You can also check out Spoonie's column, 3-Leaf Clover, on Celtics blog. Spoonie, you've got something coming out tomorrow, I believe?
I think so, as long as I finish it after we're done here tonight. But yeah, I'm breaking down basically just like the overall impact of Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser. It's a pure bench 3-Leaf Clover. And then just like the defensive genius of Al Horford. And then the third thing, I think I'm just going to talk about like Joe Mazzulla. What a legend. What a G. He just had that video with his wife today, too, who's a West Virginia legend. She was a local reporter here, so everyone in West Virginia loves his wife, too, Cammie. So, just like Al, Sam, Pritchard, and the Mazzullas, baby. So 3-Leaf Clover, hopefully tomorrow.
Hell yeah. Well, look, the link for that will be in the description, as is the link to our playback room, Celtics Playback Watch Parties, playback.tv/Celtics blog. Come and watch Celtics games with us. And lastly, join the Discord. That has truly become this like hotbed of Celtics sickos, chopping it up 24/7.
Yeah.
You can hit us up anytime on the Discord, by the way. If you do join, you get access to our run sheet and some behind-the-scenes stuff. And you can recommend segments, which is exactly what our guy RJ did. And that's why we're talking tonight about the Celtics' weaknesses. So shout out to RJ for that recommendation. I've talked enough. Jake, why don't you kick us off here, man?
Oh, boy.
This team is fucking amazing, but where could they improve?
It is hard, especially in the midst of a 9-game winning streak, to take yourself out and be like, we can never lose again.
These guys.
Yeah. So how exactly does it happen? And I mean, it kind of, you guys have got some great stats in the run sheet here, and we saw a little bit of it in the Sixers game when teams go to a switch everything defense. That has been something that has given the Celtics trouble in the past against the Heat, in particular in the last 2 seasons. When you switch everything, that is going to really nullify the drive and kick game and force Tatum and Jalen and guys to just put their head down and really attack. And we saw them have really, a lot of success doing that last game, obviously getting 37 free throws. And Tatum and Jalen, I think, have really improved in this regard, in getting to the rim and being, especially Tatum lately. He feels like he's kind of gone to a new level getting to the rim. But I do think that can be a way to take the Celtics out of what they want to do, but also then start to generate some turnovers. And that, I think, has been why the post-ups have been so good for, specifically, I would say, Jalen's game, but obviously the whole of the Celtics, is when you're posting up on the baseline, a defender can't come from the baseline and surprise you and turn the ball over when you have to drive through a crowd in order to get to the rim. So that's why the post-ups versus driving through traffic has been a nice adjustment from this Celtics team. But if a team does go to switch everything, there are going to be moments when you have to drive through traffic, put your head down, and that's where turnovers for both Jalen and Jason, I think, can be an issue. Statistically, they've been good with turnovers this year, but playoffs, different beast. You could play an elite defense in the Orlando Magic round 1. You get the Heat or the Knicks in round 2, and maybe the defense lightens up if you get the Bucks in the conference finals. But when the game plan is locked in, night in, night out on, we are so good at turning Joel Embiid over. As soon as he puts that ball on the ground, we start generating turnovers. I promise you the Heat have similar rules and similar feelings about Jaylen Brown driving to the rim, and that's where I could see some potential things start to pop up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it was somebody was on Iguodala's podcast a while ago, basically being like, yeah, here's the Jason Tatum rules and how we turn him over so much. And it was one of I think, an ex-Heat player. So, yeah, I think
it was Iguodala talking to Jason Tatum, I believe.
Was it?
Yeah.
I'm
pretty sure, yeah.
That might be right, yeah. But, it was like kind of simple, but also like to extrapolate that and put it into practice in a game is very difficult. And that's why Spoelstra is one of the best players ever. It was like when he takes 2 dribbles on the left hand, then the strong side help goes and attacks his left hand there. It's stuff like that, which is like when you talk about it, it seems simple, but when you're in the midst of like game 7 of a Eastern Conference Finals, like not so much. But I think like against the switch everything defense, Jake, you touched on it, like the post ups are going to become that much more important. And we do post up, I think, the second most frequent in the NBA, but it's still not that many in the like this, like if you're taking, 60 possessions of offense a game, it's still only like 8 or 9 possessions a game. So I wonder if we see that number tick up to like Hakeem Olajuwon, Houston Rockets like levels of like 17 a game or something like that, just because like when you've got teams that are really switch everything, that's a way this team can punish it with basically everyone outside of Derek White in the starting lineup and Al Horford. Like all those dudes can post up mismatches.
Yeah, I had a similar weakness listed, and maybe this is more like symptomatic of playing up against a switch everything defense, which is when teams don't help on our drives, because they're like the base of the most simple way of explaining the Celtics offense is like it's just drive and kick, drive, draw help, draw a double, kick the ball out for 3, and that's why we're such a high volume 3-point shooting team, because we generate so many of them using that strategy. But we first saw this against the Grizzlies like way earlier in the season, where it was this painfully close game. And watching it, you're like, what is going on here? This is a well and truly undermanned, Marcus Smartless, Ja Morantless Grizzlies team, and yet they're holding us to a lower offensive output than what we're used to. They were not helping on our drives, and I think that early in the season, it discombobulated, in particular the Jays, where they're just waiting for that double to come on that drive. It wasn't coming, and then the Grizzlies, they do have some form of rim protection. They do have some bigger bodies waiting for the Jays at that point of the season at the rim. The Warriors did it to us as well when we played them in Golden State a little while back now. We're going to see them again soon. And then most recently, the Sixers, who went to that switch everything defense, they were not doubling the Celtics on drives for the majority of the game either. And it took us a while to figure that out within the course of that game. But there is a stark difference between how we handled that game a couple of days ago against the Sixers compared to versus the Grizzlies, where we barely got out of there with a win. And in the Sixers game, you could see them start to figure it out throughout the game. And even Porzingis, during his end of first quarter interview, was like, we're still trying to figure out what they're doing. I think they're also trying to figure out what they're doing. And then we obviously watching the game as well, we're doing the same thing. And by the end, it was clear. And Tatum was like, oh, okay, single coverage. okay, I'm a fucking superstar. I'm getting to the bucket and I'm finishing, and I know what to do now in this situation. So maybe it's not as big a weakness as it once was, but I do think that opponents will try and utilize that against the Celtics in the postseason.
I will say, like, when you flip it around, what makes the Celtics so good defensively is because you don't really need to help at all. And, like, that's just how basketball works. As soon as you have to commit extra resources to a player, you got to put 2 on the ball, then that's when you get in rotation and drive and kick and all that kind of stuff happens. And what's insane about the Celtics, it's like Tatum, Jalen, Derek, Drew, Al, everyone can kind of hold their own, guard their yard defensively. Pritchard, Hauser, and even when, you know, it is a Hauser or whatever, it's like you don't want to overhelp. You don't, and if you are going to help, you really want to trap. And so when teams are not helping, you just have to put that head down. And I think that Jalen and Jason are more well equipped to deal with it now than they were, for example, in the 22 finals run when Tatum broke the turnover record. Misleading stat, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think Jalen especially has been doing a really good job. Like you saw it in that Knicks game where they were just shading so much help towards Tatum. So they were like playing Tatum with a lot of help defense, but they weren't playing Jalen that same way. Mm-hmm. And then like he was just putting his head down, he was just putting his shoulder into people, and he was just getting buckets. And you know, when you're not going to bring help against Jaylen Brown, like the way to beat Jaylen Brown is to send lots of help from different angles and turn him over. Like you don't let him go one-on-one, Thibodeau, you moron. But who am I to say? But and it was, you know, carved him up. So 30 points, no big deal. But yeah, I think that you're definitely right, Ben, that was definitely a problem in the beginning of the season. I think after that Grizzly game, we talked on the podcast, like, I bet we see teams defend the Celtics like that more often throughout the season. And we really haven't seen it a ton until like this Sixers game was definitely one time. I think OKC kind of did it to us too. And they just have better defensive personnel than definitely that version of the Knicks without OG, and certainly that version of the Grizzlies. So, and as long as those guys like understand that the help's not coming, because again, it's difficult. Like it's easy to say like, hey, the help's not coming. But when you're so used to like those reps, like every time I get to the rim, the big guy's coming over, the corner help's coming, and I can just hit that pass. It's tough to like change your mindset and just like, no, just go up because it's not going to be there. So I think they've done a great job. And I especially like shout out to Jalen, who's just been like feasting against that type of coverage often because he doesn't get it all the time. Or rather he gets it far more often than Tatum does. Wherever they help on Tatum, there's like 4 guys on Tatum every time he gets to the rim. But I think it kind of like leads into one of my weaknesses. Again, this is nitpicky stuff, right? But like the Celtics don't pressure the rim nearly as much as the other top teams, right? So we're talking about like, hey, don't help make the Celtics pressure the rim. Well, we're 27th in points in the paint, 27th in field goal attempts at less than 5 feet, and 28th in drives. So I think that kind of flows into like just make them be uncomfortable by pressuring the rim, you know, taking these long drives from outside the 3-point arc and like take several dribbles to get all the way to the rim and hope they screw something up.
Yeah, so I was thinking about those numbers and like thinking about the Celtics offense as a whole. And so much of their offense is kind of like someone sets a ball screen for Tatum or Derek or whatever, and then they find someone on a pop or they find someone on a roll. And I'm not 100% sure how the tracking data works, but I'm guessing that doesn't count as a drive, right? So it's like when you find when Tatum finds someone on the short roll, that's not a drive. And so much of the Celtics offense is predicated on finding guys on the short roll, finding guys on the pop, and then kind of going from there. So like, yes, they're not attacking, you know, the rim in that way, but they are putting pressure in the paint and forcing guys to collapse a different way. And then just like more broadly, philosophically, like with drives, obviously Jalen and Jason, you want driving, but it's like of the personnel on this team, who do we really want driving more? It's like talking about the turnovers. I mean, Drew Holiday's kind of become the favorite child of the Celtics over the past kind of few weeks here, but We saw him kind of running the offense a little bit down the stretch here. He is prone to making some of these questionable decisions and stuff with the ball in his hands. It's like outside of Jalen and Jason, yeah, Derek White, he can drive as well, but also like if you're in a switch everything defense, he can, as long as he's got the right matchup. But if you've got the right defender on D White, he doesn't quite really have like the explosiveness, athleticism to really just dust guys off the dribble in the same way that Jalen and Jason do. And then obviously Pritchard, Hauser, and Horford aren't going to be guys that are like consistently driving as well. So outside of Jalen and Jason, I think it's like the right philosophy to play that their way that they're playing is like to pressure the rim. You want to find guys by passing. You want to use Derek and Drew and Al to roll and to pass into the roll. And that's where you get those paint touches as opposed to forcing Drew to drive from the perimeter in that way. So that I like the point, and I think it's something that people like to look at from a Celtics perspective, but I think that it doesn't actually play to the strengths of the personnel on the roster.
Yeah, those numbers, rankings as far as drives and points in the paint, surprisingly low to me as well. So, Jake, it's interesting how you illustrate it. Like, there's still plenty of paint touches via our post-ups.
Spin zone, baby. Spin zone.
Yeah, you had that in the holster, ready to go, which I love. But this is an interesting point along those lines as well. So, obviously, we look at those low drive and point in the paint numbers, and despite that, our offense is still very good. In fact, it's the best in the league. Defensively... Yeah, best ever. Great. So defensively, though, also, I think at the moment we've got the third ranked defense in the league per cleaning the glass. But our turnover percentage, our ability to force turnovers from our opponents, 28th ranked currently on the season per cleaning the glass. But is it an actual weakness? And there are some flow-on stats from that. So obviously we don't turn the ball over or force turnovers, much rather. And subsequently, we're 22nd ranked overall in transition frequency. We don't get out in transition that much compared to the rest of the league. We're 24th ranked in transition frequency off live rebounds. Even though if you think, I guess, anecdotally about our experience watching the game, it feels like they get out and run quite a lot. And yet, compared to the rest of the league, they don't. And a huge part of that is that we just don't turn other teams over all that much. And yet, similar to the point on the offense, the defense is fucking awesome. So is that a weakness, or is that just a symptom of the way that the Celtics play defense?
I think it's one and the same, right? It's certainly a weakness. You want to turn teams over. But a lot of those Nick Nurse, mediocre Raptors teams who are 43 win type teams, they turned teams over a ton, but it's because they were gambling so much that they also got shredded in the paint. I would like the Celtics to turn teams over more. I actually think it's kind of crazy that they're so low in turnover percentage with the defensive personnel that they have, but also clearly Missoula has drilled into them, stay in front, don't give up drives, don't let them crack the paint off the dribble. If they take a pull-up mid-range or a pull-up three and it's kind of a half contest, that's okay. We're happy with that. We're a great defensive rebounding team, except for the last 3 weeks. But we'll just deal with it that way. It's also part of the reason I don't want to jump on anybody's stat if they have this, but we also don't foul basically ever. And that's the part of the reason is the philosophy of we don't really try to turn teams over. And we just kind of keep people in front of us. And it's probably an extremely frustrating, defense to attack because there's just not a ton of openings, man. There's just not a ton of easy shots. And if you have a guy who gets hot from mid-range, yeah, you can light the Celtics up, or a guy who gets hot on pull-up jumpers. We saw it with Shea, right? He lit us up from that mid-range, deep floater range, stuff like that. We concede those shots, but otherwise, dude, there's just no gaps in this defense.
Even when you were talking about that, Ben, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we almost need to qualify every quote-unquote weakness with, this team's fucking awesome. And the chat is doing a really good job of, as each of us are describing what we, theorize are these weaknesses, the chat are no, it's because of this. Ty Coffee in the chat was just as I was talking about the defense, he was no, that's because we have to stay home and we don't have to gamble. And it's there's just an immediate, this is exactly why we can justify that as a statistical weakness. It's not an actual weakness. It's just a symptom of the way we play. So, and this is, early on in the segment, guys. Suffice to say, the team's pretty great. And we really are nitpicking here.
Look, like, yeah, it's like this team's not perfect, and we want to try and figure out, like, and as the Celtics are trying to figure out as well, right? Like, they're trying to figure out how they can get better, just like we are. And so I think it's a fun exercise to do, but like obviously, like
we know,
they're the best team in the league for a reason. And like, okay, they're not generating turnovers, but they're generating misses, which I would argue misses are far more valuable than generating turnovers, and misses are kind of like turnovers as well, right? Like if you're running off misses, you can kind of get out that way. And I will say, like, a good point, Spoony, on that Raptors team, and a thing that a lot of regular season teams do, a lot of teams do in the regular season in order to like boost their offense is, or defense is, gamble for turnovers, offensive rebound, like crash the glass hard. Hello Tibbs, and hello that Raptors team as well. Hello that regular season Grizzlies team. So like offensive rebounds, turnovers, and transition are three things that if you really hello paces, if you focus on those three things in the regular season, that can like really give you an edge on a night-to-night basis over an 82-game season. But once the playoffs start and teams are completely locked on, it's like offensive rebounding, that starts to like go away. Transition like evaporates completely because everybody's getting back on defense. And so you take that stuff away, what do you have left? Which is why the Grizzlies have always really struggled offensively in the playoffs. And so of the things that are statistical weaknesses, and you look at the playoffs, if those are weaknesses, then it's like, well, that's not really an issue when it comes playoff time.
Yeah, we're playing playoff style basketball already. Like that's just how we play. Like it's just tailor-made to win in the playoffs. And I'll say on the transition numbers really quick, the Celtics don't kill you in pure transition, but they kill you in semi-transition where KP runs down, Tatum backs it out, and it's like, oh, we got a cross match. Like Duncan Robinson's on KP. Like, let's back it out. It's technically a half-court possession, but it's because they ran the floor hard, sort of in transition, that they like get that cross match, get the mismatch is easy too. So like we do it. Like I think that's why our perception is that we run more than like the numbers say.
Because like just anecdotally, right? Like I have almost never yelled at my screen this year, like hurry up. Like how much over the last 2 years in particular has it been like, oh my God, dude, just please go.
Dennis Schroeder, pick up the ball.
Yeah, and like we haven't done that. Like I personally have not done that. A lot of you guys are in the playback room. Very rarely are we screaming like, hurry the fuck up. And it's just like they're moving. They're surgically sped up, I guess, is maybe what they're doing, right? Yeah.
Interesting you use that word surgically. This is bad, but I've got to put it out there. It's in the back of all of our minds, and it's not a weakness. It's just a theoretical weakness. How much all of this great time that we're having right now, and will hopefully, touch wood, continue to have. It all hinges on the 7'3" Latvian Moses, Kristaps Porzingis, right? Like we're an injury, we're a tweak, we're something away with Kristaps for all of this falling over, despite Jason Tatum being in the MVP conversation, even if it's just Stephen A. Smith coming up with shit to talk about during the All-Star break, despite Jaylen Brown, playing at an All-NBA level again and being an All-Star yet again, despite all of that, like KP goes down, we're in big, big trouble. And I'm sure people in the chat can relate. I'm sure you guys can relate as well. Like, because he's so injury prone, that's maybe not a weakness, but it's high risk. If you are performing a risk assessment, you're stamping that with your high risk stamp, right? I'm sure that's what risk assessors do. That's how they work, right?
High risk, baby. No, I think of all these nitpicks, because all of these are like massive nitpicks. This is like the only one that is like legitimately a problem for this team's like chances to win a title, frankly, because like you're right, Ben. Like all the things, like the clutch offense grinding to a halt, like the rim protection, like the pick and pops where we just play 5 out and defenses look absolutely fucking helpless. It all hinges on this man whose one weakness are his ankles and knees. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's friggin' terrifying.
It really is.
Obviously terrifying. But I will say, right, so last year he would have played 70 games if the Wizards weren't tanking, right? This season he's currently on pace to play 60 games, and that is with like they've been very careful, right? It sounds like he could have come back in 3 games that he left early. He's obviously not playing back-to-backs. As of today, he's on pace to play 60 games. And so he's probably going to get to like 55, and that's in the bubble wrap system. So this guy, you know, he's entering his 28 year in his physical prime. Talked about how he's adjusted, how he's dealing with his body. There's a world where we are moving towards a reality where Kristaps is just like not made of glass anymore. And that happens. And like you go back early in his career, he played 72 games in his first year, 66 in his second year, 48, then does the ACL. And then he has that period there for the next several years where he can't get right. And it kind of makes sense, right? You do, like, it leads to Rob and whatever. Like guys, you get injured on one side, it leads to injuries on the other side. Maybe it just took him a while to like recalibrate and like deal with all that stuff. And now he's totally fine and good to go. How about that?
Jake, this is a soothing balm for my brain. I need to hear this. Like someone like Ben Klosky in the chat just said, like, don't say it out loud. And like, I hate to bring it up. I really do. It's not an elephant in the room. It's like a pig in the room. It's a smaller being in the room. It's
pig in the room.
Elephant adjacent in the room.
That's what my friends called my college girlfriend. Just kidding. I didn't have a girlfriend in college.
Nice flex.
I was gonna say. I can't believe this like weaknesses segment has gone on so long. I'm pretty well out of. I mean, some people in the chat just quickly on Porzingis have called out like defensively, him playing too deep in drop in the playoffs. That could be attacked. We did kind of address that on the last pod, like after the Knicks game. So we probably don't need to go too deep into that, but. That we've shown our versatility on both ends, and particularly the defensive end, where we've got answers to that, both with Porzingis and adjusting how he defends at, you know, to what level of the screen he comes up and defends the screen, or if we just take him out entirely and bring in Al, or hopefully down the stretch Xavier Tillman as well. So I don't know how deep we need to dive into that, but it's potentially a weakness also.
I agree. I think he does struggle a little bit with some drop, like where he is at the level, and then dealing with some pick and pop bigs, but like. The pick and pop big thing is kind of an unsolvable problem, like for every team. If you're dealing with a guy that's like elite from out there, which is why we love the Latvian man so much, because it is a nuclear bomb waiting to happen at any point. My last weakness, which is like more of a myth busting weakness. So like the number one go-to thing that people that think the Celtics are going to lose is like they shoot too many threes, and if they don't make threes, they're going to lose. And shout out the First of Four Discord, and specifically Tice, who has been around for a long time, back to the Celtics Reddit days, as far as I understand. He can code, pull data and pull things together, and he pulled this information together, and the three sets of data are shooting 33.3% from three and above, between 33.3 and 30, and then below 30. And then he has all the team's records when they shoot from three, and how they've done. So if you join the Discord, we can like send you the link to the code. You can have the full thing, but I've broken it out here for you as well. So the Celtics, when they shoot 33.3 or above, which is not very high at all, which would be like dead last in the NBA, like by a wide margin. They are 39-3 when they shoot 33.3 or better, which is 92.8% win percentage, and that's 72.4% of all of their games. So it's like they're just most likely going to shoot that from three on any given night. And then so you go to 33.3 to 30%. The Celtics are top 5 in that at 4-3, above 500. And it's just kind of a small sample for most teams. But now this is the most interesting part that everybody, makes fun of the Celtics for, is below 30%. If they miss their threes, what happens? The Celtics are 3-6 in games where they shoot below 30%, which, like, let's have a look at some of these other teams. The Nuggets, 2-9 when they shoot below 33%. Yeah, shocking. Then the Thunder, 2-6. Mavs, 1-7. Heat, 3-5. Knicks, 1-7. Pacers, 2-11. Talk about 3-point reliant. The Pacers transition regular season, like, that's who they are. Kings, 3-7. Cavs, 4-6. Clippers, 4-6. The two teams that are like up 500 or above, Bucks are 5-5, I believe. And look, part of that is just Giannis, right? Like, when your best player is Giannis, you're going to have the ability to kind of play a different way. And then the Lakers are 6-5, and that is because Adam Silver has decided that they get lots of free throws. And so that's the reason that they are 6-5. And the other team is Warriors, who's 4-4, but that's just kind of a weird statistical outlier, it looks like, because they're 1-6 in games where they shoot between 30 and 33. All of that to say, if you're going to shoot below 30% from a three, most teams are going to like lose on a given night, assuming the other team shoots like a normal percentage.
Yeah, and like those Bucks, one, they've had a cupcake schedule that's toughened up, but I bet a lot of those wins are from the first part of the season. And two, yeah, I mean, like Giannis is just absolutely insane. He doesn't really make threes, although he kind of is shooting them a little bit better this year. So
he's 40% on threes, which is weird.
I know, but he just when he takes them, it's like we won. But he's actually kind of making them this year. But this goes into like perfectly my last nitpick, which is like sometimes the Celtics can get baited into bad threes. They lead the league in above the break threes, 7th in accuracy, which is actually pretty damn good for their volume. But, we're nitpicking here. First in the amount of pull-up threes and 12th in accuracy. Like, I don't really truly believe this is a problem. But, I guess if you're, prone to be a doomer and you look at that below 30% record and you think like, oh my God, that's the way, like 3-6. Hey, that's going to lose you a series. If you win at that winning percentage, and like with the types of threes they can sometimes take, maybe that's how they, bow out in the playoffs. I don't know. I don't really buy it. I actually think for the most part, they take really good threes. Even the above the break threes, like they're catch and shoot off Porzingis, and like the pull-ups are Tatum and Brown and Derek White walking in, and Drew Holiday walking into like wide open pull-ups. But I guess like there's an argument there.
Yeah, that feels like the way that the Heat might suck us in and try and force us into our worst habits. But again, it feels like we are just so self-aware as a team that we're more aware of our bad habits than anybody else, and aware of what teams do to try and draw us into those things. So while I think teams are going to be very cognizant of that, I feel like we've grown out of it. So maybe it's just something I tell myself every night before I go to sleep. But I mean, that's why I guess we've been like exponentially nitpicking with this segment as we try and work down the list of potentially what their weaknesses might be. But it's definitely something to be aware of, and hopefully the Celtics, I'm sure they are. Hopefully they're aware of it as well. Should we talk about how awesome this team is? I feel like we need a cleansing before we move on.
Do it.
So very quickly, because obviously they're great, but I think it's a healthy thing from a fan perspective, especially like now it kind of feels like, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but as far as regular season enjoyment, we have hit a bit of a ceiling. I think we feel like we know everything there is to know about this team. So why not like study the back of the book and try and understand like what their downfall might be. So just to wrap on this segment, a reminder of how awesome this team is. 46-12, a 9-game winning streak. Your best player, for better or for worse, probably for worse, he is in MVP conversation. That's always fun. Or maybe it's not, based on some of the discourse on Twitter. We've got the first ranked offense, the third ranked defense. We're first in defensive free throw rate, which you mentioned earlier, Spoonie. Second in defensive effective field goal percentage. Third in offensive effective field goal percentage. Fourth in turnover percentage. Dunks and threes have us on a 64 win pace and a 99.9 probability of finishing with the first seed. We're fourth in accuracy at the rim, fourth in accuracy from three, first from the corners. It goes on. I'll stop rattling the stats because honestly, there's like pages and pages of these where you're just like, oh my God, this team rules. Anything else that you would add to that, guys?
I have one really quick stat that I just found today when I was messing around at cleaning the glass. I tweeted it out. On 2 days rest or more, the second best team in the league is plus 9.5 per 100. The Celtics are plus 20 per 100 possessions when they get 2 or more days rest. Dude. Like they're murdering teams when they're rested, and that just means because everybody's playing, and this it's just like we talked about it last show I was on. It's like, what do you do to stop this team offensively? I have absolutely no idea. There are no solutions. And then you look, and they're also an incredible defense too. So like, this feels like the year, man. It does.
I think it's going to be hard statistically to see it before it happens, but I am starting to really believe in like the Celtics defense, and that being like the thing that really takes them to. We talked about, can we go to another level? And like it's hard to say they can go to another level when they're already historically great. But there's a couple of guys on this team defensively that, like, coasting maybe is a little strong, but, like, when they dial it up, it's like a completely new level. And Tatum is maybe at the top of that list, and then Horford as well. Like, I think he just gives you this playoff foul. Playoff foul, baby. Playoff foul. Like, you talk about the playoffs and how important it is to be versatile and how you can play the matchups. Al Horford, I think, can really be a piece that is like a queen on a chessboard. Like, he goes a bunch of different ways, and lucky for us that he does go those multiple ways. But yeah, that versatility piece, and I think just Tatum turning into, like, I think this might be the year where people maybe finally, like, give him the credit for what he's capable of defensively, because I think that he might go to a place defensively that he hasn't quite been before, and that's what I'm really, like, latching onto.
Raptors Kawhi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Raptors Kawhi. That's the guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right
It's
there.
a great comp. Great comp. Bring on the playoffs, man. Like, we're so ready. We've studied all the scrolls. Like, we're at this point, right, in the season where we're just hardcore nitpicking on the team, trying to find quirks with them that kind of exist, but probably won't be real problems in the playoffs. But bring on the playoffs. Look, we're going to come back in a second and talk about the difficult upcoming stretch for the Celtics. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. First to the Floor is proudly brought to you by Prize Picks. The NBA playoffs are rapidly approaching and the action in the Eastern and Western Conference standings is heating up. Whether it's the battle for the second seed in the East or the fight to stay out of the play-in bracket, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like Meek Mill and Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. I've been having a lot of fun with the Prize Picks app, particularly with prop picks for the Celtics. I feel pretty confident making those less or more picks given how closely we follow the team, and it definitely adds an element of excitement to watching the game. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match of up to $100 when you download the Prize Picks app and use the code CLNS. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So, Mavs tomorrow in Boston. Warriors a couple of days later, Sunday night in Boston. Then on the road, Cavs, Nuggets, Suns. 5 upcoming games, all very good teams. I guess the Suns are like the least good team in that stretch. Maybe the Cavs, which is to say they're all amazing teams. And this is, like we talked about on the last show, this is the part of, I'm going to use this analogy again, the Truman Show where he's like sailing off right before the producer guy turns off the weather. We're at the peak, the apex of the storm.
I know the movie. I don't think Spooney's
I've never
seen the
seen
Truman
it.
Show.
All right, yeah, it's probably falling flat as a reference.
No, I got it. It's a great reference, and this is absolutely it's the last little stretch here that's really difficult, and this is exciting. Like, I think I'm excited to see how the Celtics manage it from a minutes perspective, from a rotation perspective. Do we see Tillman? We saw a lot of experimentation from Drew from Joe, Andrew, I guess, in the last game with the switch everything, and a bunch of different stuff that we touched on last episode. So I'm excited to see how they handle it. The Mavs are coming in like on a tough end of the road trip. They had the buzzer beater loss to the Cavs, and they played the Raptors on a back-to-back, which they won. I just saw Luka's questionable with an ankle thing for tomorrow. He's always limping around, kind of floating around. So I think he'll play, and I think that everybody's going to be up for this one. I think Tatum takes these things like pretty seriously. And the last couple games against the Mavs, like obviously in Dallas, they had the fourth quarter where Tatum and Jalen was essentially taking turns just hunting Luka down the stretch and cooking him over and over again. Yeah. And then last year, similar, like there was like the Luka Tatum MVP stuff, and we got that incredible highlight of Tatum stuffing Luka at the rim. So I think that they'll be up for this one. As you said, like 2 days rest, MVP, national TV game. I think that the fellas are going to be ready to go.
Yeah, and the Mavs have been playing great, almost as good as the Celtics over this last month or so. Third best offense, eighth best defense since February 1st. But, fellas, I need you to check me here if I'm off base. I think Luka's moving up my LeBron James rankings of most hated NBA players. Like, I do not like. I just hate him. I don't know. Like, all he does is complain. He's got the ball in his hand, like an absurd. Like, if you look at like the time of possession leaders, it's like absurd what Luka's doing, and his touches are so crazy. And like, kind of feel like there's some stat padding going there. Everyone leaves his team and gets better when they leave his team, and like everyone just slobs over him like he's the next coming of Magic Johnson. And it's like, watch him on defense, fucking embarrassing to watch that dude play defense. And then he's like up in ref's face and doesn't get technicals, and I don't get like, fuck that guy, dude. I just don't like him. I'm sorry. Like, I hope we kill him.
I was about to say
literally.
The Mavs. yeah, we get you. I was about to say like the Mavs and the Suns have the least like narrative-based juice out of these next 5 games, because you look at Warriors, Cavs, Nuggets. It's like Warriors. Obviously, like, we understand what the narrative is there, especially, you know, adding in the most recent game and loss to them earlier in the season. Cavs, they're second in the East. It's probably the narrative's more for them than it is for us, as far as like trying to prove themselves and gain one game back on us, even though it's ultimately not going to get them anywhere. Nuggets, it's the second game of the Denver Cup for the year. As Blop killing it in the comments. Thanks, Blop. So those games have clear narratives, right? And then the Suns and Mavs less so. Now we've got the added "let's kill Luka" Mavs narratives. Thanks to Wayne Spoonie here. The Suns, if you had to like formulate a narrative on that one, is it the fact that like Booker and Tatum have kind of been compared as peers since coming into the league at similar times? Is it the player archetype comparison of like KD kind of adjacent Tatum, and the fact that Tatum locked him down in the playoffs a couple of years ago? If you had to build a narrative out of the Suns game, Spoonie, what are you formulating there for the fans?
And I like Yusuf Nurkic coming to Boston, you know, rather, you know,
Latvia versus Bosnia, Latvia and Bosnia, kind of grudge
like
match?
World War II all over again.
Yeah.
No, I think you nailed it with like the book. Like, if you ask a Suns fan who is better, Booker or Tatum, they're gonna say Booker every single time. And if you ask a Celtics fan or any other fan, they're probably gonna say Tatum. So I think,
or any other fan.
Facts.
So I think that's probably what it is, because I think Tatum exercised the Kevin Durant demons in that round 1 series when we went to the finals. Like, he dominated KD. Like, KD's numbers looked okay, but like, if you watch those games, like, Tatum was clearly the better player. So I think KD just has a tremendous amount of respect for Tatum, like the way he's talked about him since then. So I think it's got to be like the Booker Tatum thing. And like, the Suns have been playing pretty well recently. I mean, not like lighting the world on fire. And I think Beal's out again.
Hamstring.
I mean,
well, he might be back by then. I don't know the timetable, so he could be back for that. And they've been pretty good with Beal. I think the narrative is more KD Tatum, because I think most sane NBA fans still have KD ranked higher than Booker, even if, I don't know, they're kind of right in the same spot to me at this point. But I think KD has that kind of the legacy, the staying power. So, and Tatum in particular, I don't think there's been much Booker Tatum stuff, but KD is definitely a guy that Tatum like really respects. Tatum likes to go at guys that he likes way more than like and respects. I don't think he like it feels like he should hate Draymond way more than he does. But like I don't think he like can relate to his game at all, and so doesn't like respect him necessarily in the way that he respects the way that KD plays the game. And like, even in the All-Star game, body language doctor vibes here, but like, there was like 2 possessions where Tatum blocked KD on one play and like forced a turnover on another. It's like the only 2 defensive possessions in the game happened to be when Tatum was on KD. I swear there's something to that. Obviously, Spoonie said that series, like, that was Tatum's best defensive series I've ever seen in that net series. So that's the narrative for me, is like Tatum versus KD, and Tatum, like, defensively, I find likes to go to a new level against some of these guys. So that's what I'll be building. But I'll ask you guys a question. Like, we got this stretch coming up. If you got to rank which teams you want to beat the most, like, obviously Nuggets and Warriors are 1 and 2 in some order, right? Like, I guess that's the toughest question, is which game is more important. I think emotionally, like the Warriors one, like probably feels like more significant. But I think if we were able to beat the Nuggets in Denver, that would mean a lot more than if we were able to beat the Warriors. Because like realistically, the Warriors aren't making the finals. Like I just don't see that happening. Them coming from the play-in all the way to the finals. I'm not sure I see that. If we're able to beat the Nuggets in Denver, that's going to really just get the juices flowing.
It is the Nuggets game. Like I will commit
for you,
seppuku on this
definitely.
hill. But like if we go 0-2 on the Nuggets this year and then we see them in the finals, just there's a massive psychological advantage that they have, and then the media narrative, which definitely feeds in again psychologically from the players' perspective, that is to our detriment. We need to win this game against the Nuggets. Sure, is my best friend a massive Nuggets fan? Yes. Will he send me many avalanches of text messages during the game and certainly after the game, especially if the Nuggets win? Yes, he will. But despite all of that, forget all of that. We absolutely need to win like the finals favorite, win against rather the finals favorite in the West. If we go and see them in the finals later this year, if we are lucky enough to get there and we haven't beaten them this year, that's a problem. And obviously the Warriors thing, that's the thing also. And it's definitely ranked second for me. Obviously that's very important, but I don't think it's going to matter come June. So it's the Nuggets game for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, I the Nuggets are 1 for me. I got the Mavs at 2. Kyrie,
Wow.
Luka, dude, I hate these
good.
guys. I just hate them.
Wow,
I don't know.
really hates
Like,
the Mavs.
It's irrational. Yeah.
Do we even have the odds for that game, man? I feel like the Celtics are going to be favored by like 10 points. I'm going to be pretty surprised if we lose this this Mavs game. Maybe that's why I don't think about it as being so big. I can't see it here. I think we probably don't have it.
And that's fair, Jake, and that's rational, and that's what a healthy human being would think. But I hate Kyrie Irving so much. Like, I can't deal with it. Like, if Steph beats us, and it's like, whatever, we're not seeing them in the finals anyway, but like, I just can't let Kyrie do it, dude. Like, it's just too painful.
Well, I will say, like, going back to what I said about KD, I feel like the Celtics feel the same way about Kyrie in like. Not in the way that they hate him. That's just not something that Celtics fans are ever going to get, is Tatum and Jalen hating Kyrie. That's just not going to happen. They really like him. But that's actually a good thing. I think Tatum like really likes to kick the shit out of Kyrie and like knows that he just has, and Jalen, they know that he just like cannot guard them. He cannot guard them, and they kind of swallow him up on the other end a lot as well. So, like, I think they really like this Mavs matchup and have for the past 2 seasons. Like, we're 2 seasons clear of Luka hitting buzzer beater daggers in our eyes. Oh, the spread's 9.5. Look at Jake, you know? What a
crushed it, dude.
Bookmaker right here. So I guess that's my thing is, like, that's that back to my tenet on how to beat the Celtics. Their defense is kind of it's fugazi. It's fake. That 8th ranked defense over February is just nonsense. Like I watched them play against the Cavs and the Raptors. It's just like that's not happening, man.
Well, I'm ready to declare them the best team of all time if they win even 4 of these 5 games and come up with very logical dismissals of why if they lose even 3 of them. So I'm ready for either narrative there. We'll be prepared on the show. Don't worry, guys. Let's wrap up here with some miscellaneous news. Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, according to Shams, committed to the Olympic team. So that's going to be 2 Celtics going into Paris, I believe. You can see how well I prepared for this segment.
Paris, correct.
Going up against the Aussies and other dominant international squads. Jake, I'll ask you, Spoonie, as the token American on this show about American sports. How confident are you feeling about Team USA as they start to build out the roster here?
I mean, how can you not be always confident about Team USA, dude? You know what I mean? It's like the French in soccer these days. It's like, yeah, we're going to be there at the end. Like, the Aussies are fun, although I kind of think you guys are sort of on a downslope with Patty Mills aging out a little bit too, and Ben Simmons like not being a basketball player anymore. So, but I've seen some people. There's some consternation about Drew being on the team, but like
ridiculous.
You can't have 7, 10 superstars on the team. Like it doesn't make sense. We've tried it. Not the Redeem team, but the team before that, back in the day when Pierce was on it, and Allen Iverson, it's Steph Marbury, and it was like an absolute disaster. Like, you need role players. Drew getting a lot of good role player experience with the Celtics this year. Mm-hmm. He makes a ton of sense for me on this team. You know he's going to defend, and obviously, like, Tatum is like going to be USA basketball once KD retires. So, like, obviously he's going to be there. I hope he has another, like, the WBC, what he was just in, he was great. So I hope he kind of builds on that.
Yeah, that's the question though. Is like Drew, 34 years old, Tatum after they win the finals, flying to Paris. Here's the thing. The US has not sent like the A+ team kind of in a while, and they're sending pretty much the A+. Like Steph's going. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
like
dude, that's gonna be crazy.
I'm pretty excited to see Steph play in FIBA Bowl. Like it's just not gonna be fair. So like, if they send this team that they're planning on sending and they build the roster out correctly, because like as you said, Spinny, it doesn't make sense to put like Halliburton, Brunson, and like Steph. It's ironically like Drew and Derek with Steph are kind of like the perfect guards to put on Team USA, like really easily. But so you got Steph, Tatum, KD, Booker, it's just kind of insane. And so even LeBron at this stage, you're only playing like 2 games a week, and the games are shorter. Like there's a pretty good chance I think that they just like completely smoke everybody, and it's not exactly heavy minutes for these guys in the off season.
I'm just Googling it, trying to figure out if Latvia have qualified for Olympic basketball. It looks like there's a qualifying tournament on later this year. Maybe it hinges on that. I'll certainly be cheering for Latvia to lose every game. And for Porzingis to go nowhere near. I know we've got Pete from Latvia in the chat here. I'm interested to see, or hear rather, how Pete feels about that. But we've got more important things to take care of as far as NBA championships are concerned. So love the great nation of Latvia, of course, and wish them lots of basketball success after the Celtics title window has closed. So we'll be monitoring that situation quite closely. Other miscellaneous news, Patty Mills bought out by the Atlanta Hawks.
Oh, yeah.
Otto Porter Jr. reportedly soon to be bought out by the Jazz, I believe, and an article came out a couple of hours before we went live here that the Celtics and the Clippers are sort of front runners to be signing Otto Porter Jr. in that sense. So, Jake, I already know. Actually, maybe I don't know your answer to this question because Patty Mills, known Australian, great guy, excellent vibesman, quality vibesman. And then Otto Porter Jr., he was great against the Celtics in the finals a couple of years ago. He maybe still has something that he can give a team as far as a playoff rotation is concerned. Out of those two, what's your preference and why?
It's definitely Otto Porter Jr. Like I've been on this like since day one. The guy that you're going to get in the buyout market is likely not going to help at all, but there's a chance. There's at least the slither of upside with Otto Porter Jr., who's only 30 somehow. Well, I thought he was 32. I said the other day on another podcast. I looked it up today. He's only 30, and Spoonie's just left us here, but we'll get him. He'll be back. He'll be back. But Otto Porter, 30 years old, literally 2 years removed from being like a legit rotation guy on a finals team. Like, who's a buyout guy that you're going to sign that has any chance above like 1% that can actually help you in a conference finals game? And like Otto Porter might be the only guy. His body just might not be able to do it anymore, and that's fine. But he has a chance of being able to actually do that. If he chooses to go elsewhere, Patty Mills can't guard to save his life anymore, but he's like legit veteran championship experience. Like you talk about vibes and Blake Griffin and Luke Cornett. This dude is an elite teammate, great culture guy. Would be an awesome fit in the locker room. Jalen and I'm calling it right now. We got double stuffed cookies and cream with Patty Mills, Jaylen Brown, and Porzingis here. Like,
hell yeah!
I can see Jalen and Patty Mills getting along really well, and so Patty Mills would be like right at the top of the list after Porter though.
Yeah, I agree with what you said though. As far as OPJ is concerned, like he might have a 2% chance of helping a team and contributing to a team in the postseason. So for that reason, you probably have to try and sign him if you can, or for no other reason to prevent him from ending up on a competitor's roster like the Clippers if we do see them in the finals. So definitely have a go at Otto Porter Jr. I always ask the question, is it going to be this guy who's that piece in our rotation currently, or is it going to be the buyout guy? If it's going to be Sam Hauser or Otto Porter Jr., I think it's still going to be Sam Hauser, but we do lack some depth at that position. So like if you can get him, you get him. But it's kind of win-win because if the consolation prize is Patty Mills or Blake Griffin or some elite vibesman, then you're winning either way. So it's win-win all day, again, for the Celtics every day this season, which we love. Let's wrap on this. during the offseason, there was almost a Malcolm Brogdon trade that would have pulled us in Kristaps Porzingis, I believe. That trade fell over, and we ended up trading Marcus Smart, which we're all very sad about at the time. A lot of us probably still are sad about it, despite the success of the team subsequently. But we've kind of since wondered, would Marcus Smart have been traded if that initial scenario where it was Brogdon going out had been executed successfully? And then we had these comments from Wyc Grousbeck. Grousbeck? It's Grousbeck, isn't it?
I don't know, man.
I don't know. Anyway, from Wyc earlier today. Let's check it out.
I walked in and met with Joe and Brad, and I just said, I know one thing. We're not bringing this team back. That was over the summer. It was 2 years in a row of really good teams that fell short, and in my view, they were inconsistent. We were hot and cold, high and low, and we lost. And we lost to two good teams, the Warriors and the Heat, but we lost. And I just said, we're not bringing it back. We're not running it back, period. That's my decision. Now, you tell me what changes we ought to make, guys, or let's do it together. But I wanted their recommendations. And so I said I set it out there. We're not bringing the team back, and we didn't bring the team back. Did I know we were going to get Porzingis and Holiday? No, I did not. And is that the genius of Brad? Yes.
There's your owner walking into the boardroom, just like nuts on the table.
I
Guys, executive decision here. So do you get the sense from watching that, like Marcus, this is what I interpret from that Marcus has kind of gone regardless?
Yeah, this is a good point from Roland in the chat here. Like, I remember that Eastern Conference game where Wyc was like yelling at Joe like mid-game, I think, and he was like, get the starters out of there or something. Mm-hmm. That was always a bad sign. And yeah, I think we kind of theorized this in the off season. Like, the Grizzlies deal could not have come out of nowhere. Like, thin air an hour later after the Porzingis Brogdon thing fell apart. Like, they were clearly talking about moving Smart. So I think you're right on there. I think that Smart was probably going to be gone either way. And I saw a really good like graph yesterday. It was like touches on the team this year versus touches on the team last year. And Tatum's touches have stayed pretty much the same. Obviously, Drew's went massively down from last year to this year. Porzingis has gone down. Derek, though, down from last year, up massively this year. And, like, if Marcus is here, it's just so much more it's so much harder to, like, realign the hierarchy in the right way. Like, just the way that the guy that he was politically, having Drew and having Porzingis come in, having Tatum and Jalen, like, clearly be the two guys. And then, like, last year, Derek being third in minutes behind Smart, Brogdon, and not closing games, in hindsight, is kind of a disaster. Like, yeah. And so I'm not sure that ever happens without Smart leaving, and maybe they saw that.
I don't know if I'll ever be poised enough and mature enough in my life to make a decision that difficult, like to assess the team's performance, to evaluate them to the degree where you fall on the decision to trade a guy like Marcus Smart. But like, clearly, I won't say it needed to be done, but it's obviously helped things and the personnel that we've gotten in exchange, not to mention the multiple first round picks. So we love Marcus Smart. We miss him every day, but things are good. Things are good. Now, let's wrap it up there. I feel kind of dirty for this one as Spoonie comes back for the outro. Welcome back, Spoonie. There he is. We're just wrapping it up.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, look, I was just saying to Jake, I feel kind of dirty. You know, the subject matter of this show, going through the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities of this team, because they are so good and we love them so much. But, you know, it's an off day. We're not reacting to a game. So that's what we got to do. And I think we all learned something. I hope folks in the chat, thank you for joining us. We all learned something as well. So this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to join the Playback Room, playback.tv/Celtics blog. That's going to be active tomorrow night for the Mavs game. We'll be back on this channel live after the Warriors game for Celtics Late Night, where we will be joined by Wayne Spoonie for, I think, the third time ever. So better subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that.
We have to win.
We have to win. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, keep the record going. Spoonie, Jake, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtics.
I love the Celtics!